Hello, hi everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to this live course report Q&A. My name is Liz Eggleston and I work on Course Report, which is a resource for finding the coding bootcamp that's right for you. So if you haven't looked at Course Report yet, you can use our directory to find schools that fit your needs. You can check out our blog. We've got interviews with students, instructors, founders at boot camps across the world, some application tips and other resources like that. And today we are joined by Martin Ramsin. Martin is the CTO and founder or co-founder of CareerFoundry, which is a really cool online mentored boot camp, which is based in Berlin. So Martin is going to answer all of our questions about changing careers, which he did himself, resources that you can use to really understand if you want to take that leap into web development, and he's going to give advice to students who are thinking about taking a CareerFoundry course. So I want to remind everyone that this is going to be a Q&A style webinar, so please use the questions tab in the right side of your screen to send in any questions that you have, or you can also tweet at Course Report. And one other reminder is that we're going to have a great exclusive scholarship to everyone who's tuning in, so you can use code Course Report in the referral section of your CareerFoundry application, and you'll get 10% off of your first course, which is awesome. So I'm also happy to answer any questions that you have about discounts, scholarships, anything like that after the webinar. So we're going to get started. Thanks so much for joining us today, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, of course. So if you want to just introduce yourself, and then we can get into some of these questions.
All right. Yeah, I'm Martin. I'm one of the founders of CareerFoundry. I come from Sweden originally, moved down to Berlin, Germany, about 10 years ago. Berlin has become a huge startup scene here in Europe, and quite interesting to see what's going on here. My background is that of a product manager. I was product manager for about 10 years, and then I changed my career to web developer, and through that process started the company that is CareerFoundry. Yeah.
So you started as a product manager, transitioned into a web developer. Why did you decide to make that transition? Tell us about
that. I thought about it for a very long time. Actually I didn't think about web development. I thought about creating or doing a startup. I had a lot of ideas for startups that I wanted to do, and I was constantly talking about them with everybody that I knew, and but it never came to anything. And I just realized I just had to learn coding on my own to get that going and to do something about that. So I did. I quit my job and I learned web development.
How did you learn? How did you go down that journey?
Yeah, I used free tutorials. So I started with Code Academy, which is cool because it's free. You can try it out, and I definitely recommend that for anybody who is interested. Because there you can find out if that is for you. If that's something that you like doing or not. That's really a good test that you can use the free stuff like that. So that's what I used, and other tutorials. I had a friend also who was helping me a little bit, kind of mentoring me, another developer friend, and so yeah, that's how I learned. Also, I built a project, and that project kept me going every day because I was so into it,
Okay, I want to talk more about the mentorship aspect of that in a minute. Did you ever get to use your skills, like the skills that you were learning in web development, in your product management role? And did you find that was helpful, or did that never really overlap?
Well, I quit being a product manager to become a web developer, so it wasn't really an overlap like that. Although today I am, kind of head of product at CareerFoundry, so doing both. Yeah, for me the biggest difference is really that I can create things now. I can do things. I can create things like the CareerFoundry, and that's just awesome. That I couldn't do before.
So you've had roles as product manager, as web developer, working in large companies, working at startups like CareerFoundry. What are some of the differences that you've found between working at like a large company and working at a startup? And even more than that, what would you suggest for like a new developer who's just looking for their first job? Do you suggest that they work at a large company, at like an established enterprise company, or the startup, or what's your point of view on that?
Well, I would always advise to work at startups because it's just so much more fun, you know. I've been working for big companies for a couple of years, and they pay well. But that's about it. There's a lot of drawbacks of being in a big company, including things like working on stuff for like over a year, and then that project just gets canned after a year or something like that. You know, when you're in a startup, everything that you do matters, and every person on the team matters a lot more than in a big company, and that makes really a big difference.
Yeah.
Also to the culture, you know, you value each other much more than in a big company, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So you were saying when you sort of decided to take the leap and learn to code and become a web developer that you were pretty self-taught. You were using online resources in Code Academy, but you also mentioned having a mentor. How did you find that mentor, and what sort of role did they play in helping you learn those skills?
Well, I think what was difficult for me when I learned was that although there are good, you know, free tutorials out there, what they teach is really the coding aspect. But being a web developer is just so much more than just the coding piece, and I felt that was always missing. And having somebody to talk to in learning processes and best practices, and you know, understanding what is you know, code quality, what are those things, and what tools do I use, all those kind of practical things around being a web developer, I think is often missing, and so that's what I was looking into, you know, help from a friend, and I was lucky to have a friend, and well, through that experience we created CareerFoundry, which is matching people like me who wants to learn to become a web developer with mentors. Yeah.
And so in the CareerFoundry program, that's really one of the big upsides to CareerFoundry, is that you get matched with this mentor who helps you sort of get through. How do you make sure that, and that's all online, how do you make sure that that mentor relationship is strong and that you're able to like really communicate with that mentor online, as opposed to, you know, someone that you're sort of friends with and, you know, can meet up with in a coffee shop or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we pair mentors with students as close as possible to their location, so that, you know, first of all, they're in the same time zone, they are, you know, and they might even, if they share a common, you know, experience of a city, it could be something to talk about, and also, if you want to get into the scene of being a web developer, it's good to know, you know, what meetups to go to and so on. So we try to do that kind of local pairing if possible. But yeah, communication online is what we are doing is that we have a set of exercises that students work on, and so we have 60 in total, and each of those is basically 1 day of work, so 2 to 3 hours of work, including understanding part, but then also you know, applying your new knowledge to your project, and then you submit that piece to your mentor to get review on your code quality and things like that. So you get like basically every day you get feedback from your mentor on your project and your code, and then every week we have Skype calls or hangouts with your mentor, and that's really where the bond is created, and which is very important if you want to, you know, if you want to learn something from somebody. You really need to, you know, talk to that person, and actually it works very well with Skype or Hangout. through these 3 months of the course, it creates a real kind of personal bond between the student and the mentors, and that's really, really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I was telling Martin before, you can actually do the first lesson on CareerFoundry in the web development course for free. And so I was looking at it, and it's really cool how you can leave comments as you go through the lecture, through the material, through the curriculum for your mentor. It's a cool sort of interface. So if we just get back to sort of your journey to learning to code, this may be hard to pinpoint, but how long would you say it took you to become a confident, to confidently say that you were a web developer as opposed to a product manager, which you were before?
Yeah. So my story was, I started, I think, in April with the free tutorials and learning, and then I built a project on my own in Ruby on Rails, which was a social network that I tried to make my friends use, but they never did in the end. But it was a great learning experience. So that took me in total, I think, 3 months of building that project every day. And then, so I ended that in June. And then in August, I started building the CareerFoundry platform that it is today.
So
and so I would say, in August, I felt confident enough to actually create a product from scratch.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can you tell, was CareerFoundry your first sort of professional experience as a developer?
Yeah.
Did you do freelance work before or anything like that?
No, no, I did not. Even though, I did have some experience with coding back in school, so I did learn a bit of but Java back then in school, and I did a little bit of, so I had a little bit of practice before, but that was over 10 years ago and completely different. But I had some knowledge from coding previously.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was my first project. Yeah, my first real project.
Cool. Can you tell us, so I know a lot of our readers and our listeners are sort of in a similar position where they're ready to make that career change. Maybe they've tried some online tutorials, things like that. But maybe they're facing a little bit of a roadblock. Can you tell us about one of the challenges that you faced either on your journey to becoming a developer or even in creating CareerFoundry and those first iterations of CareerFoundry and sort of how you overcame it?
Yeah, so I think the challenge in the beginning is really that you follow a tutorial which lays out how you can do things, and you implement and it works. Sometimes it doesn't work and you get totally frustrated, but you realize after a while how to do it. But then you're not really sure if you learned the core of programming, or if you just learn how to do exactly that tutorial. That's in the beginning a little bit scary, but you just basically have to do another, and you have to do another project, and then another project, and when you've done a few projects, you realize you can do this, right? So it's about practice in the beginning, and there's a lot of challenges to learning coding, and that's why a structured program might help, because you have everything in one place, you have access to mentors and other students that you can ask, and it speeds up basically the time to become a developer, I think, by probably you're at double the speed that you could go on your own, and also the quality of your work is better. Because if you're just on your own, you don't really know. It's hard to create quality code because nobody challenges you to do so, right? So it's kind of, you're you do the minimum so that it actually works, but it's completely not readable by anybody else, right? So that is for sure, that is a challenge. Yeah.
Cool. So I think that there's a great blog post on the CareerFoundry blog about this. So I know that you've got a lot of answers to this question, but even before somebody sort of looks into an educational platform that's a little more structured like CareerFoundry, what can they sort of do to try out web development and know if it's right for them? Can you tell us like a couple of good resources that may be free, maybe not?
Yeah, I would say Code Academy is a good place to start because it is free and they have a lot of different languages that you can try out. I think HTML and CSS is probably what you wouldn't want to start with because it's just easier to start with those than any other language. And the advantage of those is that you get, you can see what you're doing exactly, the second after, in your browser, you can see exactly what you're doing. So you get that immediate feedback. So I would start with HTML and CSS, and then with JavaScript, there is also some good stuff there on Code Academy. And then I would build a website, build something that you want to build. Try it for a while, see if this is something that you like doing. And I like to say that if you like programming or web development, you can become a web developer because it's all about liking it in the end. Like, it's not for everybody, for sure, and for some people it's very frustrating to program, and it's just like we're different the way we're thinking, and if we're logical thinkers or not. And so that's why I urge everybody to try it first and see if you really like doing it.
Do you think that there's have you found that there's a specific type of person who is, cut out for programming? Is it do you have to have a math and sciences background?
No. I mean, in our team at CareerFoundry, we have a mix of people, which is have backgrounds like wine specialists, for example. So no, it comes from all kinds of backgrounds. It doesn't really matter. I think you need to be a logical thinker and a problem solver. But yeah, to find out, there's just one way to try. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to remind everyone that this is a Q&A style webinar, so make sure that you're sending in any of your questions either via Twitter or with the Q&A app in Google Hangouts. And you can also comment on the Google Plus page, and we'll try and get to all of your questions. So Martin, one of the first things that I noticed that students do in the CareerFoundry web development course is to create a personal portfolio site, and I thought that was really cool. But why is that so important? Why did you decide that that's the first project that people need to focus on?
Yeah, we do have two different projects throughout the course. The first is the portfolio site, and then when students get into Ruby on Rails, they're building an e-commerce website. So the first project is with HTML and CSS and JavaScript and Bootstrap, and with those technologies you can create static websites, and a portfolio website just makes sense because it's about you, and so it's just an easy thing to kind of get started on. You have the content already because it's you, right? But then also it's very important to have a portfolio throughout your career as a web developer. So it's a reminder that you should be building your own portfolio if you're a web developer. And then the next project that you're going to start on the e-commerce website will be basically your first piece of your portfolio that you can put in that portfolio then that you just built. So it is very important because when you do look for jobs later on, if it is freelancing or if you're looking for a full-time job, what people are going to look at is your existing projects. They're not going to look at certificates or anything like that. They are going to look at what you have done, what you can do, and so the portfolio is really showcasing your knowledge. Yeah. So it needs to be good. That's why we're focusing a lot on building that one.
Would you say, do people, for a web developer role these days, or a freelance role, would they submit like a traditional resume anymore, or is it really more like submitting your portfolio and your...
No, it's usually a resume containing links to different stuff like GitHub, Stack Overflow, places like that, and Twitter and other places. But yeah, no, it's probably still is. But yeah, those online resources is really kind of showing, you know, what you can do and your GitHub account and all those things, you know.
Yeah. What makes a really good portfolio site? Are there ones that you've seen that have been submitted on CareerFoundry, or just like in general that you've seen that are like really effective, or that you just love?
Yeah, I think they you know, they all make it very personal and make it specific would be my advice. If you are sort of in generic about yourself, you know, and like, you know, I like HTML, then, you know, you're it's not going to look so good. You need to say, you know, what you are after, who are you, what do you want to do, what do you love doing. You need to kind of, because especially startups wants to hire people who are really passionate about things. So you need to.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I mean, it's like a great first impression too.
Yeah.
Okay, so Martin, since we have you here and you are a developer and you've had a hand in creating a web development course for CareerFoundry, we're going to consider you an expert in web development. So we have a few technical questions about technologies that are used in the curriculum, and we'll just do it like a lightning round. I get questions like this, you know, like you see questions like this all the time. So we're just gonna go through a few of these. So tell us, what is Ruby and what is Rails? What are the differences?
Yeah, Ruby is the programming language, and Rails is a framework. A framework is a fancy name for a lot of code that has been written already for you, so that do common tasks, so that you don't have to do them yourselves. So that's the difference, and they're bundled together often. So you use both of them. Ruby, that's what's called Ruby on Rails.
Yeah.
But it's basically both. Yeah, programming in Ruby, but using the Rails framework.
Can you be just a Ruby developer or just a Rails developer, or are you Ruby on Rails together?
You can be just Ruby developers, because Ruby, the programming language, is also used in other places. There are very specific uses of it. It's actually comes from Japan. The language was invented in Japan first and used in very specific kind of back-end system operational things that I have no clue about. But but most people use it together with Rails. And the advantage of Ruby on Rails is that, and why a lot of startups are using Ruby on Rails, is that it's very quick to create things with Ruby on Rails. And if you're a startup, you need to be fast. So you need to do things fast. So the development is very, very quick. And why we are teaching it is also because it's a very easy language to learn. And you get a lot of things for free, which in other languages takes much more time to learn.
Yeah. How about JavaScript? So like we hear JavaScript gaining so much popularity these days. Can you be a full stack JavaScript developer? Is that only for front end?
Yeah.
What's the deal with JavaScript?
So JavaScript is definitely kind of, it's a lot of talk about JavaScript right now. It used to be just a front end language. But is now also a backend language, so there are people using JavaScript for kind of complete end-to-end applications. But it's much more difficult to learn. So there are things like Node.js, for example, you might have heard of, and it's just much more difficult. So and the thing is, if you have learned one language and one way of creating applications, learning the next one is not that difficult. but starting with something like Node.js is a challenge. I think is too big of a challenge at once.
Yeah. So we start with Ruby on Rails, and then the idea is that once you've sort of graduated from the web development course, then you could teach yourself JavaScript or learn that next.
Yeah, so JavaScript is part of what we teach, for example. It's part of the the front end what we teach, because it is used also for dynamic parts of your web application. Yeah, I would think start with Ruby on Rails and create web applications with it. And if you want to learn another language after that, then that's possible. But also be aware of trying to learn too many languages at once, because it's can also be quite distracting.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the very first thing you learn to do in a CareerFoundry web development course? What's the first sort of basics? Where are you starting?
The very first thing that you do, yeah, the very first thing is actually installing all the tools that you need, and they are all part of the course. There are tools that the web developers are using on every day. So we only teach things that actual web developers are using. We're not, so it's about those tools, and then you're going to create your first website in the first exercise, and also put that live on a hosting service. So that's you're going to have a live website after the first exercise.
So you will actually be able to go to a URL and see it. It won't just be sort of like living in your browser. Cool. So you do that portfolio project. Then you were also talking about an e-commerce site. What can you tell us about that project? Yeah. So
CareerFoundry.com is built on Ruby on Rails, and so what you can do with Ruby on Rails is having, for example, having users that sign up for your service, and then you can have products that you're selling, and you can have, for example, credit card payment, and you can have a database of things, right? So so that's what you're going to build. You're going to build an e-commerce website where you sell something. And if you want to build something, if you have an idea for something you want to sell, then you should go for it through the course. Yeah, so you will implement things like reviews of your products, and then also included is how to do automatic testing and code reviews and all those things that you need to know as a programmer. And then you will launch it on Heroku, which is the hosting service, where CareerFoundry is also hosted. So we're basically teaching everything that we're using ourselves as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Would you say that once a student has completed that kind of project and then that's on their portfolio, is that enough to sort of present to a potential employer if their goal is to get a job or to start freelancing? Or do you suggest they do another project on their own? Or
yeah, because getting a job as a web developer, you have the problem of most employers wanting to have experience before, and so yeah, we do advise our students to do more projects, and either with other students, we have an alumni community where people are building stuff together.
Cool.
And or taking freelance jobs, which is also possible, because in freelancing there's all kinds of projects. There's small, tiny projects, and there's huge projects, right? So you can be building, for example, a website for a restaurant on your block if you want to. That's quite a small project, but still it's a real project that you can put on your resume or your portfolio website. Sorry. So and then you can take it up a notch for every time, and you get more and more confident on what you can do. So freelancing is also a good way.
Yeah.
But doing a group project, it has the added benefit of learning the group tools, like learning how to work in a group as well. So that's also recommended.
So CareerFoundry is online, and it's you can do it part-time, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of your students might be working simultaneously at their current job and also doing CareerFoundry. Do you have advice to those students for balancing their time? Is it possible to do both at the same time?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, for sure. We do have loads of students who do that.
Mhm.
It is tough for sure because there's a lot to learn. Um, but and you need to create a structure, I think, in your life that allows for an hour every day at least of work. Or if you set aside more time, say during the weekends, or have certain days that you put on more time. But having structure definitely helps.
Mhm.
And having a habit, that you do it every day, or like you try to have something that you work on every day. That helps. So it's definitely doable, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have advice? So you may not even know how many students are doing this, but I would imagine that there would be a lot of employers who would pay for their employees to go through CareerFoundry because it's like a great resource to sort of upskill and like get new skills for their current job. Do you have you had experience with that? Do y'all have advice to get an employer to convince an employer to pay for a CareerFoundry course? That might be too specific, but
Yeah. No, I mean we do have quite a lot of number of students that were there, with employer pay. Nothing special. I mean, just like usually it's not a big price to pay for the company.
that's true.
This amount of money. So I think it's not that difficult to convince. And what you can say is that since this is a very flexible program, you can do it. It doesn't have to be during work hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can do it in the weekends or at evenings. Doesn't affect your performance at work. That could be something that your employer might be interested in.
Yeah, we need to make like a downloadable script for people who want to convince their employer.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I feel like it's such a, it's a huge opportunity for employers these days.
Mm.
So Lauren has a question for us. She says, what is the best way for online learners to develop a community as opposed to an in-person program? Does CareerFoundry do things to make sure that people are like meeting up offline, or do you have advice for people who may be looking for that kind of community?
Yeah, I mean, we have a student community that is online on Slack, if you know the program.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a very giving community. People are constantly posting their work there and getting peer feedback. It's also we also have groups in certain cities where people are meeting up, but that's kind of nothing that we organized really from our side. It's just has kind of happened. There are, I mean, if you want to meet up locally, I would go to Meetup.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things on Meetup, so I would check that out.
What about so you had mentioned doing some group work once you're done with the CareerFoundry course. Do you suggest any particular hackathons or things like that? I think I remember a CareerFoundry student saying something about CareerFoundry having organized some offline, maybe hackathon, maybe meetup.
Yeah, we do hackathons now and maybe once per month or so. But yeah, there are lots of hackathons. I mean, that's a fun way to get experience for sure, and meeting people. Yeah, that's a great way of meeting new people as well. I agree.
Very cool. Well, Martin, that's a ton of great information about CareerFoundry, about your story. Is there anything that we did not cover that you want to talk about your journey to becoming a web developer, your journey to starting CareerFoundry, or? or the course itself?
I don't think so. I mean, I think just, my advice is generally just try it. If you like it, you can become a web developer and you can be creative online. That's a huge difference for me, at least, that I feel that I'm not just a consumer online. I'm also now a producer online. I can create things that other people are using. That's made me look different at myself. That's kind of, okay, I'm not just a consumer, and I think that's a huge deal as well. So I would, try it, build something, put it out there, and don't be afraid of doing mistakes, because everybody is in the beginning. Don't be afraid of not knowing everything, I think would be my advice also, because no web developer knows all the code. I don't remember all the different JavaScript things in my head. So nobody does. It's just, you just need to learn how to look for solutions for things, and you learn to Google really, really quickly, and how to look for things, basically. So don't be afraid of not knowing everything, because nobody does.
Amazing. Well, that's all wonderful advice, some really specific takeaways there as well. So we really appreciate it. So thanks so much for everyone for joining us in this webinar, asking questions, getting answers. Martin, we can't thank you enough for being here. Martin has a couple of really cool blog posts on the CareerFoundry blog, which I will send out after this webinar. And remember that you can try the first lesson on CareerFoundry for free. I did it yesterday. It's really cool. It's awesome. If you have any additional questions for Martin or about CareerFoundry, I'll send out contact information after this. And if you have other questions about Course Report, obviously don't hesitate to reach out to me. We'll send out the recording of this webinar and some information about that 10% off code for CareerFoundry that I talked about earlier. So check your inboxes for that, and you can share it with any of your friends who might have missed this webinar. And of course, visit CourseReport.com, sign up for our email list. You'll get all of our future updates on webinars and interviews. And you can tweet at us and tell us which school or topic you'd like to see at the next webinar. So thanks so much for joining us, everyone, and have a really good day.
Bye-bye.